Just to open in prayer and pledge. If y'all stand with me, please. Dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this day, dear Lord. We just thank you for the people here that have came in to dedicate their time, dear Lord, just to make this a better place to live. Dear Lord, I just pray that you'll be with us in the decisions that we make. Let us make them to better our community. Dear Lord, I just pray for the leaders in the community and also the leaders of our country. Dear Lord, just be with us, protect us, and guide us in all we do. In your precious name I pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. Next thing on the agenda is approval of the minutes and agenda from June the 26th, 2017. Do I have a motion to approve?
Mr. Chairman, at this time, I would recuse myself from the vote.
All right. Since it had to do with the bank he works at.
Just one note, Mr. Campbell, on the adjournment, it says AM instead of PM. There's an adjustment there. Move to approve.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Approved. Old business. Wait a minute, we got to do the approval of the agenda for September the 18th.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Approved. New business. We're going to open up a public hearing to hear the public opinion of an application to allow the encroachment into a 20-foot rear setback by 3 feet for the proposed of expanding the covering an existing patio requested by Ed Barrier. Property located at 7303 Brooklet Cove, tax map 042, parcel 45.00, property zoned RS8 PUD, partial owned by Ed Barrier. Do we have anybody from the community that'd like to come up to the podium and have any comments? If not, we'll close the hearing. Have a motion to close the hearing.
Move to close the hearing.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Next thing is to discuss or take action on the application to allow the encroachment into a 20-foot rear setback by 3 feet for the proposed of expanding a covering an existing patio requested by Ed Barrier. Property located at 7303 Brooklet Cove, tax map 042, parcel 45.00, property zone RS8 PUD, partial owned by Ed Barrier. Staff comments. Mr. Barrier currently has a 10 by 14 patio at the rear of his house in the Deer Valley Downs subdivision. His intent is to add another 10 foot of concrete to extend his patio the length of the rear of the house, as well as cover it. The rear setback for the lot is 20 feet. Currently, the patio extends into the rear setback by approximately 3 feet. However, patios are not considered to be part of the front footprint of the house. So at present, the patio is not considered to be an encroachment. When Mr. Barrier covers the patio with a roof, however, the covered patio becomes a part of the footprint of the house, which means it will then become a 3-foot encroachment into the rear setback. Mr. Barrier, are you here? Would you like to come up to the podium? Anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I have some pictures and plot plan if you guys like to see it. What we want to do is just, like you said, add alongside the house and just cover it. We initially wanted to go further out, and then I realized that there was the setback there that we could not go into. The reason why it has that setback is our lot is odd shaped, as you can see, all the properties to the side. So that's why we wanted to go where we are going. if you look at all the neighbors around on either side of us and behind us, they all have covered patios. And their patios actually extend back at least 11 feet or further. I'm just asking just to keep the 10 foot that I have and just make it a little bit longer. We're going to mirror, the roof that we're gonna put is gonna mirror all the other covered patios back there. We're not gonna do anything different. We're gonna keep the aesthetics of the neighborhood the same. And I think by having this, by us doing the covered patio, it brings up our home value. It also helps us use the back patio for barbecues and families. Right now, we grill in my driveway because I keep the grill in the garage. It's not very useful the way it is right now. And there won't be any negative impact by us doing this. On the contrary, it'll increase our property value, which will also increase or raise the comps in the neighborhood as well.
So as of right now, the concrete's already poured.
There's a 10 by 14 pad right now. And what I want to do is I just want to extend that pad 10 feet just to the edge of the house, not going any further into the setback, just extend it to the edge of the house would be another 10 by 10 pad next to what I have. And then cover the whole 10 by 24.
Anybody have any comments?
I have a question. Have you considered maybe reducing the width so that the roof overhang doesn't encroach and the base, the foundations don't encroach beyond that footprint or the setback?
Move a couple of feet from it.
Yeah, in other words, so as I'm looking at this photo here, it's showing the setback.
Yes.
And
Oh,
so,
I'm sorry, that's a poor picture. If you look at the next one, you'll see it won't go past the side of the house. The roof line will end at the very edge of the house, if you look at the next picture. And I have one here if you'd like to see it.
This
If you
comes
see
out.
that, it'll go right to
Concrete
the edge
actually
there.
comes into
Yes.
the encroachment, so he's wanting to put that over. the
Yeah, it
whole pad,
will not
concrete pad.
extend out to the side.
I got you. Thanks for the
And if you
clarification.
look at the bases there, I'm not going to do that either, the stone base. I'm gonna mirror the columns that the neighbors have as well.
Thank you for the clarification on that. Appreciate that.
Any other questions? Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Have a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Approved.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Now we're going to open up a public hearing to hear the public opinion of an application for a conditional use to allow a home beauty shop or beauty salon at 7100 Terwick Court, tax map 047P, Group A, parcel 6.00, requested by Rose Smith. Do we have anybody from the community like stepped up and have any comments? Yes, ma'am. Please state your name.
Bledsoe.
I'm sorry.
Anna Bledsoe.
Okay.
And I am one of two neighbors that will share a cul-de-sac with the people requesting, my neighbors. And I'm not here necessarily to object. I know my neighbors are in the room, and I love the growth that's happening in Fairview, but I did have a chance to speak with Kristen earlier this week, and she helped me with some of my concerns. But I had some concerns because we have some school-age children. Obviously, my property investment is at risk, and that's one of the things, but we have school-age children that share that cul-de-sac as well, and they play in that area and ride their bikes. And so we're mainly concerned about child's play and then parking, the usage of the cul-de-sac for parking for a business, obviously. And then sorry, now I have a little time here. And the business hours, because we have school-age children, I read in the ordinances that it was like 10 p.m. and, you know, school-age children typically go to bed around 8, so being right next door, that could potentially be a disruption. And then signage, I think there's some regulations and some compliance deals there that you guys have already taken care of in the city planning rules and regs. Traffic with delivery trucks and so forth. And if a business were allowed there, how would compliance be regulated? Things of that nature, just obvious things. Like I said, I'm not here to necessarily object, but just a few concerns, knowing that we have school-age children there, and then the obvious disruption. There's one way in and out of our neighborhood, so everything has to come through that one entrance and exit, and we share a cul-de-sac. So if there are deliveries for home beauty salon, we'll obviously have some deliveries. So if there's deliveries, there's unknown traffic coming through. There's also unknown traffic for whoever's, utilizing the service. So it's service retail-related business. Main concerns, just the traffic, parking in that cul-de-sac. There is a fire hydrant there, so we want to make sure that that's clear. But other than that, I don't think I have anything.
Thank you, Ms. Witsa. Any other public comments? Make a motion, we adjourn the hearing.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Next thing is discuss and take action on the application for a conditional use to allow a home beauty salon at 7100 Terwick Court, tax map 047P, Group A, parcel 6.00. Brandon, would you read the staff comments?
Yes, sir. Staff comments. Ms. Smith submitted a home business application to run a beauty salon inside her residential dwelling at 7100 Trawick Court in the McCormick Grove subdivision. Staff advised her that the beauty salons are considered a major home occupation, subject to the approval of a conditional use by the Board of Zoning Appeals. Major home occupations require compliance with a set of regulations codified in Article 3 of the Municipal Zoning Ordinance contained in the application packet. As part of the review process, the applicant needs to have a parking plan to determine where patrons will park the residence, as off-street parking is required. Ms. Smith has a very long driveway on the right side of her dwelling, and she has a secondary driveway on the left side of the dwelling as well. It is the intent of the zoning ordinance that certain home occupations be allowed, provided that there is no evidence from the outside that there is any non-residential activity occurring at the dwelling.
Ms. Smith, you want to come up to the podium? You have any comments?
Excuse me?
You have any comments you'd like to add?
As far as addressing the parking, it would be on the long driveway, and we would not be using the cul-de-sac for the parking, because the salon will reside on the side of the garage over there where the long driveway is. So, and I usually only have one client at a time. I've been working locally for years in another home, in a residential salon. So it's usually one client at a time. Maybe one will pass the other, and it's just myself.
You just anticipate just having one chair, is that?
I'll have two for just myself, though, so I can have, I can move someone over,
Okay.
But right now I just have one chair. But it's just myself, not another stylist.
And what hours do you intend to be operating?
Like 10 to 8 are my typical hours.
Wasn't there a ordinance passed that there was no parking in cul-de-sacs? Didn't they pass a law a while back for that? I know they was talking about it, but did they ever pass it? No?
Not that I'm aware of, no. I will just point out, though, that in the major home occupation regulations that you have in your packet, it specifically states that you have to have off-street parking. So she wouldn't, or technically her patrons should not be parking in the cul-de-sac anyway.
Can I have a question along those lines? Because, and the reason I ask is that we had a similar business in our neighborhood, and not to imply this is the case with you guys, but there was parking on the streets as a result of it. The enforcement aspect of that, how is it enforced? Do we have any enforcement, or is it just one of those deals where the neighborhood has to call and go, there's cars on the street? Again, not to imply that's the case with you, but that's what happened in our neighborhood. So my question would be in regards to enforcement, how is it enforced?
Right, generally speaking, we respond to complaints, so if somebody were to call, we would go and monitor it and make sure. We do make sure that all home occupation operators have a copy of these regulations and are fully aware that these conditional use permits will be revoked if it is determined that there's any kind of violation, so.
Thank you. One other question. Are you going to have retail sales there?
Just hair products,
I'm sorry?
shampoos, hair products that my clients,
Is that allowed per the restrictions of retail sales in the ordinance? Item E says there shall not be conducted on the premises the business of selling stocks or merchandise, supplies, or products, provided that orders previously made by telephone or the sales party may be picked up and the products or goods, produced or fabricated on premises as a result of the home occupation may be sold. However, direct sales of products produced off premises are not permitted. So how does that apply in this case?
I would think that that the sales that she's discussing would be more incidental to the occupation. It would be one thing if she were conducting if she just had products on hand that the general public decided to come by and peruse, like window shopping. I think that's the difference.
Is that the intent, you think, of the ordinance? Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Do we know how many home-based businesses there are? Are there any others in this neighborhood? Is it a common thing in Fairview? Do we know any of that?
In the past month, I'd say I've received 10 applications. It's just that not all home occupations are considered a major home occupation. So somebody may want to use a room in their house as their office, where they basically take phone calls, set up appointments, but the appointments may not be actually happening on site. Not all of them necessarily require people coming to the house, or if they are coming to the house, it's very limited traffic. They don't require a lot of those types of home occupations. They consider them to be minor, so they don't actually have to come for a conditional use permit.
Do we know if there's any covenants or restrictions for McCormick Grove subdivision?
I did check that, and there are none as far as operating any kind of home-based business, no.
Based on the staff comments, that says that as a part of the review process, the applicant needs to have a parking plan to determine where patrons will park at the residence as off-street parking is required. Is this a submission that we need prior to approval? The parking?
It doesn't have to be a physically submitted plan. I think if she were planning on doing any kind of improvements to the driveway because she didn't have adequate space, then I would ask for a drawing of some sort. I think she did indicate in the hall that she did have something that she could show you, though.
Did you happen to bring that with you?
Yes, we have a drawing just on some, like the measurements of the driveway, if you want to see
Yeah,
the.
I'd love to. Yeah, please, thanks. Thank you.
Ms. Smith, have you pulled any,
Okay, yeah.
So they all kind of connect. They just 1 through 6.
It's a very long driveway, but most everybody, well, they'll park.
Wow.
Yeah, and like I said, I usually have one client at a time, and our cars are going to be at the other garage, so we won't be using that driveway ourselves.
Thank you.
Ms. Smith, have you polled any of your other neighbors just to get a general consensus, and are the other neighbors informed and notified of the hearing and things tonight? Is there a sign put out?
We did send certified letters to all the adjacent properties.
Okay.
Yeah, a few of the adjacent properties are clients of mine that have been coming to me for years, so they're very pleased and looking forward to just walking across the street.
Do you understand that you cannot have a sign?
I understand there's a size. There's a size of sign. There's a sign that was allowed where I'm at, like on the mailbox. It's very small.
Where's she currently at right now?
If
Yeah,
I'm
it's
not
my
mis-
understanding that the state requires only for beauty salons to have a very small sign.
Yeah, they do. Yes.
That's something that I guess trumps the city. Generally speaking, we don't allow signs, freestanding signs, as part of a home occupation, however. So I think if you had it on a mailbox, that would suffice to, probably wouldn't constitute a sign as far as the city is concerned, but it would satisfy the state's requirement.
Right, State Board requires that we have a sign that's visible from the street, but it doesn't have to be large, or it would be very inconspicuous, but as long as it, the state is satisfied. Where I'm currently at, it's just a small little sign sitting, it's on the mailbox. And that's just to satisfy the state of cosmetology, so.
And if I'm not mistaken, it is state regulated, so the state does come by and check on her periodically.
Yes, sir, once a year.
And then she will have to abide by the ordinances that we put forth, that she has to meet before she can have this ordinance anyway. So, do we have any more questions? Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve contingent on Sydney ordinance compliance.
We have a motion to approve.
Second.
Have a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Approved. Thank you.
You.
Next on the agenda is to hear the public opinion on a variance to allow the tree replanting requirement to be waived, requested by Frank Shop Ace Hardware, property located at 1872 Fairview Boulevard, property zone CG, partial owned by Frank Shop. Do we have anybody from the community that'd like to step up and have any comments? If not, I make a motion to adjourn the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Approved. Next thing is discuss or take action on the variance to allow a tree planting requirement to be waived, requested by Frank Shop, Ace Hardware, property located at 1872 Fairview Boulevard, property zone CG, partial owned by Frank Shop. Wayne, would you read the staff comment?
Sure. Fairview Planning Commission approved the site plan for a new Ace Hardware building to be constructed at 1872 Fairview Boulevard next to First District Coffee in January 2017. As part of that approved site plan contained in the application packet, the landscape plan on page L1 calls for two different but related tasks of the applicant. First, he is to pay a sum of $10,000 into the tree fund. Second, he is to plant a total of 94 trees and 287 shrubs throughout the development site. These specific tasks emanate from a combination of the city's tree protection ordinance, the city's required tree inventory and replacement schedule for new commercial construction, and the design review manual's required landscaping provisions for new commercial construction. More specifically, the applicant proposes to cut down 69 trees as part of the site preparation phase. Due to the very large size and old age of some of these trees in the tree replacement equation, which requires the applicant to replace 50% of the removed caliper trees, the applicant must contribute 488 tree credits as part of the development. This may be accomplished by either planting only the minimum required landscaping as specified in the design review manual and paying the remaining credits into the tree fund, or by planting more than the required landscaping and then paying the balance into the tree fund. In this instance, the applicant chose to pay $10,000 into the tree fund, which is 201 credits, and plant the remainder of the owed credits, 287, which amounted to 89 trees at 3 caliper inch and 5 street trees at 4 caliper inch. The applicant states in his application for this item that the amount of landscaping he is required to plant as shown on his approved site plan will eventually obscure visibility of his building and site. He also states that the amount of trees he is required to install will be excessive and constitute a financial hardship. The zoning ordinance specifically states in Article 16 that variance requests be based on hardship due to topographical attribute, however. As part of this commentary, staff also notes that should the applicant believe the number of trees shown on the approved site plan will eventually restrict visibility, he has the option to pay more into the tree fund and plant less trees, provided that the revised combination covers the 488 tree credits he owes for the project site preparation. End of the staff comments.
Mr. Shop, you here? Step up to the...
Show, please.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's
Show.
all right.
Would you have any other comments?
I'm not new to Fairview. I've lived down the street in Bellevue since 1981. I've done business in that community for a long time, and of course, I've been out here a lot. When I bought that property, I thought this is going to be a great spot. In the letter, I sent a letter to a few of you folks ahead of time, just kind of giving you my story, how I got here in the first place, with being asked by your chairman of your industrial development committee and your Chamber of Commerce president to come investigate, which I didn't really need them. I've been looking out here for a long time because it's a natural fit for my company, my staff, and I have people that live in this community that work with me. So I bought the property, and I had no idea the kind of, for lack of a better term, hurdles I was going to jump. I built one in Bellevue in 2004, and that was quite an ordeal, just learning some of the process. Had to have it rezoned, so it was even a bigger jump. But after going through the planning process and paying a civil engineer and paying an architect, all the things that I thought I would want and need and could benefit this community, then I've got about 5 things here I'm asking you to consider. The cost is just prohibitive. And when I look at the other buildings, and I know you guys are challenged with a set of ordinances and such that you've been proposed or posed for you. But when I look at the other buildings and people I'll be competing with in this community, they're metal buildings. There's a lot of metal buildings that are just very plain, and frankly, a couple of them are not very attractive, and I understand that. I counted the trees on every commercial property on this strip that I could get to, and I'm almost up to where I feel like what Publix almost had to plant. And if you look at my business in Bellevue, which I think you're familiar with, right on the corner there where Kroger is, I had a variance from Kroger to get entrance off of their access road because I could not get a Highway 100 access. And so I inherited a big old maple tree right on the corner. And if you look at that thing now, it's about ready to take over the traffic light, and it's going to take over the street light, and it's going to have to come down. I spend a lot of money every about 3 years having someone come in and just thin out the trees I have so they won't fall and tear up cars, or hopefully, and ultimately they still, some of them obstruct my business to begin with. So a lot of it is expense. Looking at that and thinking 287 shrubs, if you look at the next where they actually see all the shrubs around it, it's like I'm almost in a prison cell of shrubbery and trees. And I understand what you're wanting to do. I'm just asking for some common sense actually on the project, because you'll never see my building within about 5 years. And I guess it's unfortunate for me, and had I known better and maybe been more patient, there's a lot across the street that has no trees on it, and I wouldn't have to cut anything down. I wouldn't have to have any trees or pay into a tree bank. So that's why I proposed this request, so that actually, you know, this is going to be a recurring theme over the next several. I'm trying to mitigate these costs to make it an affordable project for myself, or I can't do this. Ace Hardware is a member-owned cooperative. This is not corporate money building this. This is my wife and myself borrowing this money to build this and take a chance on another Ace Hardware, which has been in my family since '72. I'm excited to try it, but it's just prohibitively expensive right now. Construction costs are some of it. I've dropped the size of my footprint to try to mitigate the cost a bit. And I'm just trying to get some middle ground here to try to help me find a way to do it, because I really want to be out here. We're going to bring some brands and some service and some different things out here that, frankly, a lot of your people are fortunately coming to me in Bellevue right now and getting. But I want to do it out here, because this is a great community, and it's a growing community, and I think it's a perfect fit. So I hope I won't be redundant in the next 4 that we're going to talk about, but that's kind of my story, and that's where I'm at.
Mr. Show, you know, we as Fairview citizens, we've put our requirements to make a change for our city. Yes, there is buildings out there that are full 10, some of them are just partially, but in the process, we're trying to better the look of Fairview than what we already have. So that's the reason we've went forward and tried to make the buildings look better than what they do, because there is some buildings that don't quite look so good. And the ones that we are trying to get to bring in, we're trying to improve the look of Fairview. Not make it a Bellmead or nothing like that, but just make a good-looking city for our folks to be drawn to. But any comments?
I'd like to interject with all due respect. I have a store in Bellmead, and it's a metal building, and I've never had a complaint about it. And it's one of the highest achieving stores in all of ACE's 5,000 stores, and it's a metal building.
Yeah, I'm not saying that, but I remember that building when I was a kid. So it's been there for
We
years.
built it in '86.
Yeah. Well, the old station across the street, my dad worked there for 18 and a half years, so I know exactly where you're at. But that was built in '86, and like I say, we're just trying to better. Not saying that we may not grant these, but I'm just letting you know where we're at too. Do we have any comments or questions?
You could always pay more into the tree fund, and the reason that that was created is so we didn't have everyone coming in and cutting down all the trees. And so we had to develop a mechanism to avoid that happening. So if you think there's going to be too many trees on your property, you could just pay more into the fund.
And me myself, when I looked at that and seen how many trees and bushes, I thought it was kind of overdone myself. But that was just my opinion.
Well, I went to Tractor Supply down the street, and I counted, I think, 30 trees, and it's an appropriate and attractive-looking property. I mean, there's a large parking lot with some islands, but I counted about 30 trees. Now, I don't know if they got more planted in the back where you can't see them, but that looked appropriate. And in front of the Publix, I can't remember the exact number, but the majority of those trees are all on the back on that hillside where they're just on the hillside. I don't know, no one would ever see them from the front of a Publix center. There wasn't a building or a property that I could see down through here that had more than 20 to 30 trees in front. And I understand you want to make a change in your community and you want to upgrade, and I understand that. But I feel like it's a burden, it's a line in the sand where it's going to be from here to there instead of some type of progression, which is realistic. And I'm not going to build an ugly building because I need people to come to it and like me. I'm going to build something that's going to be attractive, but it's got to be something that I can afford to build. With all due respect, paying more money into the tree fund I can't do that. I mean, as I said in the letter, I don't know if everyone got to read it, I expected to get a construction cost of about 1.2 to 1.5, and it came in from 5 different contractors at 2.4 million. Selling nuts and bolts and paint and a chainsaw every now and then doesn't really warrant a $3 million project. So that's why I can't do it at those regards. So But if that's the only option this board can approve, then that's what I'll have to take into consideration.
So is the tree bank fund more economical if 201 credits was 10,000? Another 10,000 would be 201 credits. And so that would be a lot more economical than that 100,000 number on our paper. I think we're in a spot right now where this is mandated by our design review manual. We're trying to upgrade all of our regulations and also improve some of our regulations. And so, to me, adjusting or setting a variance would be taking a step backwards from the forward progress we're making right now. We had a building under construction right down the road that paid a large sum into the tree bank fund. And so, if we set a variance tonight and say, we're going to lower that amount tonight, are they going to call us and say, hey, do I receive a credit? I think we're just trying to set that standard going forward, or everybody's going to be in here asking us to try and reduce that. And if it's something that we need to revisit, we can do it during our adjustments. But at this time, this is what our design review manual reads. That's just my feeling on it.
Any other questions or comments? Did we have a motion? Or any other
I make a
questions?
motion to deny item 4.6.
Motion to deny 4.6?
Second.
Second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Denied. Next thing on the agenda is public hearing to hear the public opinion on the variance to allow the 70% masonry facade requirement to be reduced or waived entirely. Request by Frank Shope, Ace Hardware, property located at 1872 Fairview Boulevard, property zone CG, partial owned by Frank Shope. Do we have anybody in the community that would like to come up and make any comments? If not, motion to close the public hearing.
Move to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Next thing is discuss or take action on the variance to allow the 70% masonry fascia requirement to be reduced or waived entirely, requested by Frank Shope, Ace Hardware, property located at 1872 Fairview Boulevard, property zone CG, partial owned by Frank Shope. John, would you read that? Staff comments?
Yes, sir. Staff comments. The Fairview Planning Commission approved the site for a new Ace Hardware building to be constructed at 1872 Fairview Boulevard next to First District Coffee in January of 2017. As part of that approved site plan contained in the application packet, there is a rendering of the proposed building that shows elevations, the design of each facade of the structure, and the specific materials to be utilized. The design review manual requires new commercial developments' exterior facades to be constructed of at least 70% brick each. The elevations shown on the approved site plan reflect this requirement. The applicant states in his application for this item that he prefers to construct a metal building with some split-face block on the bottom portion due to the costly expense requiring masonry products. He contends that several existing structures belonging to competing businesses are constructed of other materials, such as toolbox and the co-op. The applicant requests that this materials requirement be waived, as he believes this is excessive and cost prohibitive, and he states that this requirement is a financial hardship. The zoning ordinance specifically states in Article 16 that variance requests be based on a hardship due to a topographical attribute. However, as part of this commentary, staff also notes that these two specific businesses and their respective buildings have been in operation and in existence for a very long time and are not new or recent construction that would have been subject to this design review requirement. Additionally, the proposed Ace Hardware is slated to be constructed on Fairview Boulevard, which is one of the city's main thoroughfares and gateway corridors with high visibility.
Any comments?
It's what I just talked about. It's trying to design an affordable building that will cash flow for a business, because if the business can't make it, it's gonna be an eyesore, and it'll be a bad thing for the community as well as me. So, we looked at a lot of different, and I was hoping you guys would consider maybe some different metal components that have texture and design that look like stucco, or they're not just slap metal buildings. I have a sample I brought, but I left it in my car. It's very, very nice and very appropriate. There's actually a Westin downtown, that the Westin Hotel is being built with what looks like limestone panels, but they are metal panels. And that's the type of ingenuity and creativity that I've asked my architect to help me redesign to try to make this more affordable. And I'm just going masonry, 70% masonry, just, again, makes it an unaffordable project, because there's just a very cost-prohibitive construction style. So there's a lot of different things out there that are pretty darn nice, that, like I say, are good enough for the Westin Hotel on Broadway or 8th Avenue. And it's disappointing those aren't considered, that it's narrowed down to masonry only. And I just want to say too, it's, like I say, I've lived here all my life. I've been in Nashville all my life and watched a lot of things, and things change. And I understand what you're confronting. But frankly, these types of construction costs and ordinances, you're only going to get Fortune 500 companies in here that have money to build this kind of stuff. And Ace Hardware is never going to do that, because they don't have, it's, like I say, it's people. It's just individuals, entrepreneurs that are doing it. So I'm afraid that whoever created and proposed these ordinances set a path for Fairview to get the dirt cheaps, the Dollar Generals, the Freds, all the deep pocket people that come, and not the people that add a lot of flavor to their community. And I'm sure some of those people do fine things, but it's just unfortunate for me, because I think it's an independent small business like an Ace could do great things here, but you're not going to have someone come out here and do this. So I'm not threatening you. I'm just posing that people like me don't have that kind of money to jump these hoops and build these types of structures at these costs. So, and I honestly, I haven't even done any redesign for 3 months, because I got to $150,000 in this project beyond what I've paid on the property, and I just said, I'm bleeding anymore. I can't bleed anymore. I got to stop. So I've just done some research with my architect to get a few design options, but I haven't done any redesign beyond. It won't look like that picture already, because that facade was what we really wanted to build, and that's what was so expensive. So that front facade, that front elevation is changed a good bit, just to make it where there's not so much carpentry and such work in the front. Yeah, that. But I do think I could make, my business in Bellevue is split face block and stucco for the most part, and it's attractive. I think it's attractive, and we could do split face block up partway and put some type of design panel above it. It would not meet this requirement. That's why I asked for a variance.
Any questions?
I have a question, Mr. Shope. So as I'm looking at this rendering here, so the block is on the lower portion below the overhang, am I seeing that correctly?
Well,
The darkened
honestly,
area?
that drawing there was with our original design, which was, I think it was hardy plank, and it was brick below with hardy plank above. And the brick was high enough to meet the 70% requirement.
So brick on the lower portion, and then the horizontal was hardy plank that flanked each side of your Ace Hardware sign, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. But you said that's not what it is?
It is not going to be, I couldn't do that. That's what came in at 2.4 million.
Okay.
So one of the huge cost savings, I've learned a lot in the process with these. Of course, anytime you start changing or bringing an elevation out of the plane of the building, you're just adding construction dollars, because it all has to be pretty much custom done. And then it just adds. So the building as it would look in a new design would be more of a plain with a porch and signage across the top portion. And I would expect it to have split face block or some type of masonry up 3 or 4 feet for protection of the building, for one thing, but also to be aesthetically, add some aesthetics to it. Because down the right side where you see that porch hanging out, that would be there. We were gonna do a zero clearance sidewalk with pallet goods all down that side, and needed block or some type of masonry to protect that wall as we push things up against it. My guys aren't always gentle with a forklift, so.
Has
No,
MJM
it's-
done any other renderings that would give us any indication what this would even look like?
Pretty basic renderings, nothing to the scale of this full-scale set of plans.
I think that's the biggest thing, is like, if we allow the variance, it's almost like a blanket variance, like you want to almost see what the alternative or the option is. And the planning commission had a pretty in-depth discussion maybe 2 years ago in regards to the 70% brick when Taco Bell came. And I think the planning commission was prepared to allow a variance, to allow a little more stucco. And so I think the planning commission is open to that variance, but it's probably something that they would have to see, to interpret. So it'd be hard for me to vote here tonight to grant a variance and then not know what would be coming, if that makes sense.
That's what I was fixing to ask, if this ain't something that needs to go back in front of the planning commission with another plan to submit back in front of them before it came back to us.
And I understand what you're saying is you don't want to keep digging in, but I think that, I can't speak for everyone on the planning commission, but there was a large discussion about the 70% brick previously, and they were prepared to make a variance on a separate building because it was still an attractive building. They had some stucco and some other facade on the outside, so I think that's an option, but I just don't know about here tonight, just saying, yeah, just get rid of it, not knowing what it's going to look like.
Can we defer this back to the planning commission to be looked at again?
Mr. Shope would have the opportunity, if he desired, to take the site plan back to the planning commission with a different design and see what their thoughts would be.
Okay. But I mean, as far as what we would need to do tonight is just defer it.
Yeah, I think that would probably be appropriate.
Okay. I make a motion, we defer it back to the planning commission for,
Second.
to be looked at again. Had a second, all in favor?
I have a question, please. Is that the appropriate action right now? Because let's assume Mr. Shope doesn't want to take that step. So would that make this the appropriate action? To defer it? Just a question. I'm not, are we being presumptuous in thinking that Mr. Shope may want to go back before the planning commission with us?
You can certainly have that discussion with him. I mean, if he prefers to proceed with a vote from this board, I mean, he's entitled to hearing what the Board of Zoning Appeals
Okay.
feels.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Shope, would you rather us defer it back to the planning commission and be looked at again? Or would you rather us make a vote on it tonight?
Well, if I may, I'd like to ask a question. Would a simple elevation like that be sufficient? Do I need to do a full design overhaul, or can I just show you a picture of what I would propose with all 4 sides, the elevation of all 4 sides?
Micah, you answer that?
I would have brought that. I didn't know wasn't prepared for that. I'm sorry.
I think it's appropriate in relation to what Mr. Butler stated about not wanting to grant a variance sight unseen without
Correct.
knowing what the new design would look like. So
Could
if
he
Ms.
apply for an amendment to a site plan to the planning commission and bring that new elevation?
Sure, I mean, that would be fair. I would think that, I mean, technically, he would need to go to both, because the planning commission did approve it as you see. So if he revisited it, brought in a new facade, if you decided to defer tonight to give him time to work up a new elevation, then the Board of Zoning Appeals could look at that next month. And if you agree that, you know, it's appropriate and you feel comfortable with it, it's in the, you know, it seems to fit in with the city, then he could go back to the planning commission. If he needs to have anything else that needs to be changed, he indicated in his letter he was trying to pare the size of the building down some from what was originally approved. That would need to go back to the planning commission because it would be an amendment to the site plan. So at that point, if a variance were granted from the elevation, that would just be presented as part of the revised site plan to the planning commission. And the board, having granted the variance for the design, the planning commission would just has to go with the variance, because this board is who grants the variances. That makes sense.
Okay. So which direction do we need to go in tonight? Just defer it?
I would ask Mr. Shope if he would like to revisit the facade and try to present something different, something of what he thinks he can come up with and afford, and present it to you if that's the route he wants to go.
If we were to draw that, and I think it's already drawn, and then present it to the planning commission, would it still then come back to the appeals board for the appeal of the masonry requirement?
Technically, the Board of Zoning Appeals is really the only board that can grant a variance from the design review manual. So I believe it would need to come back.
That's a yes.
Yeah, to the board.
So we could defer this item to the next Board of Zoning Appeals meeting. You could bring the 4 elevation sides so we could see it. It could be voted on here, and then that could, if you receive approval, you could take that to your new site plan when you resubmit to the Planning Commission for your amendment.
Okay.
Okay, let's make a motion that we defer it to the next Board of Zoning Appeals meeting, that Mr. Shope will bring back a new drawing and plan of the structure of the building, and then we'll look at it at that time. Do I have a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Defer it to the next meeting. Next public hearing is to hear the public opinion on the variance to allow a mandatory requirement for a fire sprinkler system to be waived requested by Frank Shope, Ace Hardware, property located at 1872 Fairview Boulevard, property zone CG, partial owned by Frank Shope. Do we have anybody in the audience that would like to come up and say anything? If not, we'll close the public hearing.
So
Yeah,
moved.
So move. All in favor?
Aye.
Public hearing is closed. Discussion and to take action on a variance to allow a mandatory requirement for a fire sprinkler system to be waived requested by Frank Shope, Ace Hardware, property located at 1872 Fairview Boulevard, property zone CG, partial owned by Frank Shope. Brandon, would you read that, please, the staff notes?
All right, item 410, staff comments. The Fairview Planning Commission approved the site plan for a new Ace Hardware building to be constructed at 1872 Fairview Boulevard, next to First District Coffee, in January 2017. The site plan showed the new building to have a fire suppression sprinkler system, a safety-specific requirement by Fairview Code for all buildings that are 5,000 square feet or larger in size. This building was originally proposed to be over 13,000 square feet in size, although the applicant states in his application for this specific item that he has redesigned the building to be under 12,000 square feet. He additionally notes that the International Fire Code requires buildings 12,000 square feet or larger in size to be sprinkled. While that is correct, the City of Fairview has its own fire protection ordinance, as stated above, and the municipal ordinance, being stricter, takes precedence over the international code. The applicant requests that this fire sprinkler requirement be waived, as he states in his application for this item that this requirement is a financial hardship. The zoning ordinance specifically states in Article 16 that variance requests be based on a hardship due to a topographical attribute. However, as part of the commentary, staff also notes that this structure, based on its specific nature of being a hardware store, will have many flammable items contained within it.
Any questions? Looking here where it says that anything over 5,000 square feet, so we're going to be an additional 7,000 square feet over what is required. And being a hardware store, and I know a little bit about hazmat and so forth, so to me, being a hardware store, that's something that should be mandatory anyway, because of all the paints, the thinners, all the chemicals and everything that is in a hardware store that can add to a fire hazard. At least the sprinkler system's there it's going to help protect your business, possibly your employees, and the surroundings also. So my personal opinion is that the sprinkler system needs to stay. Now, any other comments?
I don't know if our building official or our fire chief have any comments or any, do you as staff believe it should be implemented or do you think?
As building inspector, I stand behind the 5,000 square feet minimum. I believe that anything over 5,000 square feet should be sprinkled.
Would our fire chief like to add anything?
Basically the same thing. The intent of the International Fire Code was to protect firefighters and the general public. And as far as the 12,000 square feet that it requires, or the 5,000 that under 12,000 that it requires, it says that the intent of the International Fire Code is a minimum standard, and the city can approve an ordinance to make it stricter, and that's what we've done. I feel the same thing. The nature of the business, what's gonna be in the occupancy, things that are gonna be inside that, we need to have a sprinkler system in that type of building.
Any other questions or comments?
I'll make a motion in lieu of public safety and fire hazard to deny the variance.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Request denied. Next thing is public hearing to hear the public opinion on a variance to allow an electronic message board on a pylon sign instead of required monument requested by Frank Shope, Ace Hardware, property located at 1872 Fairview Boulevard, property zone CG, parcel owned by Frank Shope. Any comments from the community? Not, we'll close the public hearing.
So moved.
All in
Second.
favor?
Aye.
Closed. Discussion and take action on variance for an electronic message board on a pylon sign instead of required monument requested by Frank Shope, Ace Hardware, property located at 1872 Fairview Boulevard, property zone CG, parcel owned by Frank Shope. Wayne, would you read the staff comments, please?
Certainly. 4.12, staff comments. The Fairview Planning Commission approved the site plan for a new Ace Hardware building to be constructed at 1872 Fairview Boulevard next to First District Coffee in January 2017. The design review manual requires that the new commercial developments associated signage be constructed in monument style, fully enclosed in brick or mortar, or combination of both, with a maximum height of 10 feet. similar to all signage in the city. The applicant requests that he be able to install a 20-foot pylon sign rather than the required monument, and he requests that the sign have an electronic reader board for better visibility. As part of this commentary, staff also notes that the design review manual does not prevent signs from having an electronic reader board as long as they are part of the monument-style sign construction and are no larger than 10 feet in height. There are a number of existing commercial businesses located along Fairview Boulevard that have monument-style signs using stone columns, as the applicant suggests that he has at his Bellevue store in his initial letter to the board. They include an electronic reader board. There was discussion of the sign at the PC meeting, as the sign plan shows two different sign options. Option A on page SD-5 is the sign that the applicant would like to have, which is 20 feet in height, but has a monument-style look due to the stone columns creating a pedestal similar to his Bellevue store. Option B on page SD-5 is the sign that meets the city's requirements and was approved as part of the site plan. In reference to the applicant's letter, which mentions a metal pole support similar to the applicant's Bell Mead store, staff believes that option would be inappropriate here. It's the end of staff comments.
Can I just say that I prefer the sign on the left because you have visibility through it. And I think the monument signs are a traffic hazard to me personally. And that's why I built one like I did in Bellevue. And that's why I proposed to build this one, because you can't see through that thing on the right. But when you get the one on the left, I understand it's up in there a little bit, but people can see through it and you can see cars, trucks, and people coming. So, on Highway 100, where it's so busy and so much traffic, I think it's important to have as much visibility as you can. That's why I proposed the higher sign. And frankly, I'll have a lot of trees, so you won't be able to see that one for long. Just kidding, but you won't be able to see it.
What is the setback on the sign from the highway?
I think as long as you're out of this, as long as you're in the, off the right of way, excuse me, that there, you can put it as close to the street as you prefer. You just have to be out of the right of way.
So you can set it right up to the edge of the road?
I
It
believe
was
so, yes.
drawn pretty far away, as I recall. I can look at it, I'm looking for it,
That
but
414 site plan, the last page on the documents, shows it, identifies it kind of next to the entry lane to the right side, set back pretty far.
Any questions? Comments?
it's far enough back because there's a setback off the street, and I know this committee's aware too that we're doing about 70, it's close to 80 grand worth of TDOT improvements for that in front of us too on the highway. And so I guess with having to put those 3 lanes in the entrance and then the setback, and then the sign has to be far enough away from the setback according to the civil engineer's drawing. So it won't, clearly it won't be in a line of sight from a driver trying to pull out, but just for people being able to come and go and just the ease of visibility, period. It's sign approach.
Any questions?
I also, in reading and hearing that staff comments, I thought I was allowed to do the reader board. Did that say I was not?
No, you are.
I am?
The electronic reader board.
It was okay? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
It's just the 20-foot
Like,
pole that's not. And how far did you say you've got it on your paper from the road? Because I can't find it in mine. Yes, sir.
So you have a setback, and then it's way behind that. So it's right there.
For me, I think it's just that consistency. I think we set a plan to try and have the monument implication where, or implicated where where all new business would have a monument sign. We have some taller signs right now. In a perfect world, we'd be able to make them all come down to the monument to match, but we've had others come before us and asking for a taller sign for the same visibility concerns. But I think hopefully over time we would have all monument signs and that would be consistent, so no one would have a disadvantage or an advantage. So to me, it's just trying to get that consistency, having a plan and sticking to it.
Have a motion?
So just to confirm, the option B was what was previously approved on the Plan Commission. Was there discussion in the Plan Commission with the taller sign as well? Do you remember reading those minutes at all?
Yes, I have them here. What was stated was that proposed option B does meet the requirements. So if they wanted to approve the site plan, they could approve with option B. Mr. Anderson asked Mr. Welch, were they good with this instead of going to Boza, going with option B? Mr. Welch asked, if it gets approved tonight with option B, do they still have the availability to go back to the Boza? Mr. Lavorne stated, yes, they can still go to the Boza. Mr. Welch stated, yes, they would be fine with that. Mr. Mangrum amended his approval motion to include option B for the sign. Mitchell seconded. Basically, yeah, they discussed the A and the B, since both were shown on the site plan, as you can see on the screen, but they approved it with B, knowing that the owner could go to the Board of Zoning Appeals and ask for a variance from the sign ordinance to get option A approved.
I have a question. Does the sign height requirement just apply to the town center overlay? Is there a point where beyond, like for example, the interstate, obviously signs are taller. Just for my edification, where does that requirement start or end? Do we know? Just curious.
The new sign ordinance, and I'm not sure when that was amended. If it's within the city limits of Fairview, technically it's supposed to be a 10-foot maximum. Now, we do have some existing signs out at the interstate that are old and grandfathered in, and so as long as they keep them there and just replace swap out the panels, they can keep them. Once one of those comes down, they would have to try to, if they wanted to put up a new one sometime in the future, they would have to apply for a variance.
So it's a city limit deal and not just a town center overlay deal, for example.
Right, no, it's not, the height, the 10-foot height maximum is not part of the design review manual. That's simply the fully enclosed by brick or stone provision. The 10-foot maximum height is just part of the municipal zoning ordinance's sign provisions.
Thank you.
Mr. Lemon, the shell, the new shell that was built by the interstate had to have a monument sign.
Ah, okay. Thank you.
And so is the new building going down the street, correct? I make a motion to deny the 20-foot sign and stay with the original option B.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Sign denied. Next thing is public hearing to hear the public opinion on a variance to allow the requested detention pond fence requirement to be waived, requested by Frank Shope, Ace Hardware, property located at 1872 Fairview Boulevard. Property is zone CG, partial owned by Frank Shope. Open to the community for any comments. No comments. Make a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second. All opposed? All in favor? Excuse me.
Aye.
Trying
All
to trick us,
opposed?
aren't
Let's
you?
do it backwards here. Discuss and take action on a variance to allow requested detention pond fence requirements to be waived, requested by Frank Shope, Ace Hardware, property located at 1872 Fairview Boulevard, property zone CG, partial owned by Frank Shope. John, would you read the staff comments, please?
Yes, sir. 4.14 staff comments. The Fairview Planning Commission approved the site plan for a new Ace Hardware building to be constructed at 1872 Fairview Boulevard next to First District Coffee in January 2017. The design review manual requires that new commercial construction utilize underground detention, but in the occasional case that above-ground detention is permitted, the city requests that the detention pond be located in the rear and be fenced for safety purposes. It was a stated requirement at the January 2007 Planning Commission meeting that the detention pond be surrounded with an aluminum fence, not wrought iron, as the application states. The applicant requests that this fence requirement be waived, as he believes this is unnecessary since the fence will be located in the rear of the site, and that he states that this requirement is a financial hardship. The zoning ordinance specifically states in Article 16 that variance requests be based on a hardship due to topographical attribute. However, as a part of this commentary, staff also notes that this fence requirement is a safety-specific mandate of the Planning Commission. End of staff comments.
How deep and how big is this detention pond?
According to those topography lines, it would drop about 4 foot. And depending on if it's a 5 or 10 foot spread line, it would be 20 foot or 10 foot, 4 foot and 20 foot, or 4 foot and 10 foot.
I was assured by my civil engineer that it's a mowable grade, so it's not like a drop-off, it's a mowable grade. So, and honestly, the only people gonna be back there are gonna be probably where my employees are parking, and the property crests and goes back. No one will even see that back there. I just thought it was honestly just a ludicrous requirement, but that's why I asked for a variance. But I'm 0 for 4, so I figure I'm probably 0 for 5, but.
The masonry is still open up there.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, 0 for 3.5. And the fence was, and I wrote in my letter, wrought iron like. I did understand he said aluminum or some other material, not wrought iron, but a decorative type of fence, which, you know, I wouldn't put chain link there anyway, but something else would be.
Ms. Costanza, do you have some?
Just in relation to the, I guess, the slope, you have a copy of the minutes from that meeting where they discussed the detention pond specifically and the fencing. And Mr. Beata stated the detention pond is 10 foot below, and the engineer, Mr. Owen, stated approximately. The top contour, if you look at the site plan where the arrow is at an 808, and the last contour at the bottom of the pond is an 818. So it does have, it slopes down over a 10-foot grade, I think. So, and it was discussed that it was it wasn't a steep drop off. It's more of a 3-to-1 slope, which is why it was discussed that they would just go with the 4-foot
Aluminum.
4-foot aluminum fence. So that's just what the minutes stated.
Mr. Chairman, in light of, I don't want to put this board at odds with the Planning Commission, and clearly I'm probably not getting the traction I need tonight. So I just seem to withdraw this request because I don't want to pit you guys against the Planning Commission. There was one guy on there that wanted me to do that, and it was just kind of one last thing for me, and I just wanted to appeal it. But in light of that, I think I just would withdraw this one, if you don't.
Okay. Make note that Mr. Shope wants to withdraw the fence around the contention pond.
And I probably won't have a chance to say anything else. I just want to say I appreciate y'all considering my requests. It's been a lot of angst for my wife and I to get this to this level and to get this presented. Your community's been very good to my family because you shop with us a lot, and we appreciate that. We reciprocate by supporting things in your community. We try to the best of our ability. And I'm sorry this isn't probably going to work, but I appreciate the opportunity. And I really do appreciate, Kristen, your time and this board's time trying to at least consider it. And I appreciate the fact you gotta have a standard. And right or wrong, you're sticking with it. And I understand that's your prerogative in what you need to do for your community. And I'm just grateful for the opportunity to stand in front of you. I've never had my name called so many times in one public building. I'm scared. But I can say it's probably just not going to happen because I can't. It's not now anyway. Maybe some other day. Who knows what the future holds? But again, I appreciate your time.
Mr. Shope, we appreciate you coming up and standing in front of us tonight, and hopefully things will work out for you. Just note that we're not against you. We're just trying to set a standard for Fairview.
No hard feelings.
And so
I'm a blessed person already, so I just wanted to bring a little out here.
Well, I think we'd all like to have you here, quite frankly. I think I'd
Yes.
feel confident speaking for the board. We think you'd be a great neighbor and a great asset to it. And I appreciate you understanding the position that we're in as a city and the intent of what we're trying to achieve. And hopefully it will work out to where you can eventually build it. I'd love to see you here because I, for one, travel a lot to Bellevue to your
Thank you.
store.
Appreciate it.
I've got one of your cards and everything.
Good, well, I appreciate it. Well, we would be good at it. I am concerned, I mean, like I say, I've been a neighbor for a long time. I am concerned that the table's slanted so far the other way that it's going to be prohibitive for a small guy to get it going here. It's going to be prohibitive. So, but y'all will address those as you have your future meetings. And again, thanks for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Shep.
thank you, sir. Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned. I should have said it backwards again.
What's that?